Good evening, everyone. My name is Amber Stevens, and I am the Secretary of the Atlanta Canes community. We'd like to welcome you tonight on behalf of our Atlanta Canes and Executive Board. I was a dual political science and history major at Miami and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in 2011. I'm an attorney practicing in Georgia and North Carolina, and currently I'm a discovery lead with my firm. Our Atlanta Canes represents more than 4,100 alumni from the more than 120,000 plus domestically in our Canes communities. Though we would hope to be meeting in person, we look forward to engaging and providing you with virtual programs for now and are excited for what the fall will look like for our Canes. We're thrilled to have alumni, families, and friends of the youth from all over the country joining us tonight. But before we get started, we have a few questions that we'd like to ask you via a poll. Your answers will help us paint a clearer picture of our audience and where you're turning in from. If you're watching us on Facebook, type your answers into the comments, and we'd love to hear from you as well. So here are our questions. 1, is this your first Cane Conversations? The second question is, where are you attending from in the United States? And our third question is, what industry are you in? All right, so as our answers roll in, it looks like most of you have been to Cane Conversations before, which is awesome. Thanks very much for joining us consistently. We love it. It's great to have our community continue to come together via these virtual meetings. And then some of you are new tonight, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to be your first Cane Conversation and hope we're not your last. As far as where everyone is attending from the United States, it looks like the Southeast is the majority. And so we welcome everybody that's representing the Southeast. We also welcome everyone representing the other areas. We've got some Northeasterners, we've got some, looks like Southwest and the Central US. So thank you everybody again for joining from wherever you are. And lastly, what industry you're in. We've got an overwhelming, looks like the majority is from business and finance, and that makes sense given our topic tonight. But thank you for everybody who's joining in from other industries as well. Thank you all for answering our poll questions tonight. Before we turn things over to the speakers for the evening, I'd like to share a few logistics to get the most of our time together. First, the chat feature will be available, so feel free to introduce yourself, add comments, and chat with us throughout the program. Next, if you should have any questions, please submit those via the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible. If you're joining us on Facebook, we'd love to hear from you. Make sure that you use the comment section to interact with us. And now let's get the program started. I am eager and pleased to introduce our moderator for tonight's program, Dr. David Major. Dr. David L. Major is a strategy professor in the management department of the Miami Herbert Business School. He serves as the inaugural director of OneMBA, the school's flagship global executive MBA partnership. His background in the management field spans both academic and professional experiences. Before his award-winning academic career in management, Dr. Major spent a decade in professional practice at PricewaterhouseCoopers and General Motors Corporation. Dr. Major is engaged in important diversity initiatives at Miami Herbert. His roles include Academic Director of U Start at MHBS, Emerging Program in Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which works with college students from underserved communities, Faculty Advisor for graduate students in the National Black MBA Association, and Faculty Liaison to the National PhD Project for Underrepresented Doctoral Students. Dr. Major is actively engaged in scholarly research in the field of global competitive strategy. He has presented his research across the US and globally. Dr. Major also has a passion for teaching and student engagement. During his academic career, he has received numerous awards for teaching excellence and for university service. Dr. Major is continually driven by his love for the classroom. Before he joins us on our virtual stage tonight, I'd like to show you a snippet of how he's aided the One Global MBA pivot during these unprecedented times.
Wow. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Amber. I appreciate the introduction. And let me just start off by first saying thank you so much to the organizers, to the Atlanta Canes, and just to special events for inviting me to be here and to be able to moderate this conversation. I really appreciate it. I got to say that I'm not originally I guess I haven't graduated from University of Miami. But I want to let everybody know, Miami is my home. I was born and raised there. In fact, I grew up on University of Miami's campus as a little kid, sort of running around there. My mother worked on campus. I went to elementary school right next door at West Lab. So I have a lot of years, a lot of connections to this university. And so I am really happy to kind of be a part of this conversation. What you just saw earlier, to those that are in attendance, I'm looking forward to a great conversation with all of you and with our panelists. What Amber just showed you was just a kind of a brief wrap-up video from a residency, our virtual residency for the Global OneMBA program. And I think I asked her to show that because I see the relevance to our conversation tonight. What I want to do is just to kind of share my couple slides with you as I talk through this topic. As Amber mentioned, the topic for tonight is this idea of navigating business during the pandemic. When I hear this idea of navigating business during this time, I think about so many of the leader lectures or these business leaders that we've been fortunate enough at the University of Miami and being part of the Miami community to have come and speak to our community. So many of those leaders from so many businesses have talked to us over these last several months about their own organizations, about their own business and how they were doing in terms of navigating this pandemic. And some couple themes, I guess, continue to come up. You hear often this term, the pivot. You know, we've had to pivot. So many of the speakers have said that to us. And there was some real relevance there. They said, look, we could not do business the way we did it before. If we wanted to survive as an organization, we maybe had to change what we do and change our product or change our service. We had to pivot. So we heard that over and over again. And I think that's relevant here. We also heard the term resilience a few times, even from our president of the university. And that term especially resonates with me because it really speaks to sort of having gone through challenges, and then as new challenges or new disruptions come up, we're better prepared to deal with it, right? And so this idea of navigating through business, I think, speaks to both those things. And as we have our conversation tonight, you'll find that I will talk to the panelists and ask them questions about how firms navigate business, how they've demonstrated resilience. So this idea of navigating business, we'll apply that to firms and to organizations generally, but I'm hoping that the panelists will also talk about, as individuals, you know, what might we do as we sort of navigate business in this new time. One of the speakers, in fact, I think it was the last leader lecture series we just had, the CEO of Logitech, he said something that really resonated to me. He talked about this idea of navigating business in the sense of sort of a race car going around a racetrack, you know, entering the curve at a racetrack specifically. And I thought that was pretty powerful, where he said this idea that, you know, race car drivers, as they approach a curve, you know, they brake pretty hard as they go in. And then right away, as they're going through the curve, they are accelerating hard, moving out past that curve. And I see that as this idea of resilience, right? So many companies and so many organizations and so many individuals, you know, they had to face this pandemic in the sense of, you know, a curve where they had to hit the brakes pretty quickly. And we all saw that. We saw that in just last March, where so many companies had to hit the brakes. And we see also how so many of them have sort of hit the acceleration button and moving fast, moving through that. In fact, I can speak to that for my own organization, for what I do at the university. You know, my first love is teaching, but I'm also involved with service at the university. As mentioned earlier, I run a program called the OneMBA, Global Executive MBA program. Now, for those that don't know, this program, this is a flagship program for the university, for the business school, and it is designed all around so this idea of global business. The students involved with it, we are a partner with 5 other universities, and those students come from all over the world. In fact, we have 22 countries that are represented. And the main feature is that the students would come to each campus in the partnership. So they would come to Miami. In fact, what you're seeing there is an old picture. That is the picture from just a couple of years ago, where those students came to Miami. And they engaged one-on-one, they engaged in groups, they engaged, you know, specifically in person. With the pandemic, we had to hit the brakes. We actually had to say, we cannot go forward with our residency, which was scheduled for March of 2020. But we didn't cancel. We didn't say we're going to cancel this. What we said is we're going to postpone this. We said, look, let's figure out what we need to do. Let's figure out how we can deliver at least the academic component to the students, even if we couldn't deliver the experiential component. We had to hit the brakes. But once we've hit the brakes and figured out what we needed to do, we accelerated. We revamped the program. We made changes. We said, let's see if we can actually push the envelope here. We've got to now go virtual, but it doesn't mean we can only give the academic part. We can also get them engaged, even virtually. We can do things that go beyond just the classroom, but also have them engaged in the cultural experiences, seeing kind of the diversity of the United States. And you know, what you saw in that video was we included music and jazz and tours, virtual tours to museums and things like that. We said, we're going to try to get you to dive deep, even through a virtual medium. That seemed to work for us. The feedback from the students was very positive, and that was wonderful to see. That was, you know, my own example of this idea of navigating through this global pandemic. What I'm hoping that we'll be able to talk about now as we go forward with this conversation is to hear from the panelists. You've got a great set of panelists here that are going to each sort of talk about their own sort of experience, and then we can have a conversation about it, this idea of navigating through the pandemic. What I'd like to do is just sort of take a moment and give an introduction, briefly introduce each of our speakers. And I have their, just lost their, yes, let me introduce each of the speakers. And once I've done that, then we'll go ahead and allow each of them to kind of talk about their own organizations. But first off, in terms of the speakers, we have three panelists, starting off with Christopher Campbell. And he is a 2012 graduate of the Miami Herbert Business School. Very happy to see him, also him joining us here. Christopher is the Director of Security and Compliance Marketing at Microsoft. He is a marketing leader with more than 20 years of experience in big tech, cybersecurity, and marketing. He is a frequent speaker for the university's MBA School Marketing Club and Dean's Panel with a focus on incoming and outgoing graduates. He also served on the Atlanta Canes board in 2018. Christopher, welcome. So glad you can join us. Next up, I have Peter Lighton. Peter Lighton, he's a 2013 graduate. He is currently the AVP and lead specialty underwriter on the technology, media, and telecom risk team at Capital One. Peter spearheads the loan underwriting process to support mergers and acquisition activity of both public and private equity-backed companies. He served as vice president of Cane Records. That's University of Miami's student-run record label, for those that maybe don't know that. And he, as a music programmer and on-air personality for 90.5 FM, WVUM, again, University of Miami's student-run radio station. So Peter, thank you also for joining us, and welcome. And then our third panelist we have is Joshua Gray. He is a 2012 graduate. Joshua is the partner and co-founder of JJRE Group. Joshua is a partner and co-founder of JJ Real Estate Group. It is a real estate and cleanliness cleaning services. His background, he's actually an electrical engineer, but also real estate sales and investment. Currently, he serves as the president-elect for the Atlanta Canes Community Executive Board. So we were absolutely happy to have Joshua also joining us. So Joshua, welcome. So what you have here is, like I said, we have the three speakers joining us. And now that I've introduced them, what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn it over to each of them to give their own take, talk about their thoughts or their own experience within their particular business and how they've dealt with the pandemic, the impact of that, and even spend a couple minutes talking about the outcomes of that. Once they've had a chance to speak, and then we'll get back together for some general Q&A. So with that, I'm going to ask that Christopher, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and starting us off.
Yes, so hello folks, my name is Christopher Campbell. I live in Georgia, but I'm a Miami guy. Been a Miami guy ever since my family moved here from Jamaica. In fact, let's see if anyone can think of the thing that was the most impactful as a young guy coming from Jamaica. I landed here in January of 1987, and all the celebration was going on around me. And I asked my parents, why are there so many cars on the street? What is everyone celebrating? And they're like, the University of Miami Hurricanes just won a national championship. And that name stuck in my head, and I've been a fan since. And it was even a pleasure to attend that school. You know, I work in the software industry, but even much more important than that, I am a family man. In fact, you know, I'm going to show you guys, give you guys a little snippet, a little description of what my family life looks like. So if you can see my screen, what you can see is what makes me a security and compliance guy. Well, try being a Jamaican American married to a Venezuelan American with 4 daughters and 2 boys. And once you are introduced to that dynamic, you have no choice but to become a security expert. But, all fun and jokes aside, one of the interesting things that happened when COVID started was it not only changed the way how I had to approach my business, how I handled my profession, but how I had to handle my family. And one of the biggest impact I saw with that was actually from the school district. In fact, this was my first introduction into how COVID could impact a business and how you had to respond to it. I live in Fulton County School District, and in that district, if you had to go to school virtually from home, you had multiple different tools. You were using one tool for video conferencing, one tool for storing your data, one tool for email. And literally, they would have 6 different tools that kids would use to access their schoolwork. Now, imagine this stress that put on my wife and me having to play tech support. I would have to get up each morning. I would write this sheet of paper. Hey, this is the login process. Make sure you log out, log into this app first, log into this one second. And it was always a nightmare. And then 3 months into the pandemic, the Fulton School District did something unbelievable. They told all the kids and parents, hey, we're not going to use those tools anymore. Come in and pick up a laptop. So the students went in, they picked up a laptop. Only their ID could log into that laptop. In fact, my kids couldn't switch laptops, which was one thing. They gave them a secure laptop. They logged onto that laptop and they used the communication platform. I'm not, pitching, Microsoft, but they use Teams. And many companies are doing this, whether it's Teams, Zoom, VMware, Citrix. A lot of companies are now realizing the impact of how do you deliver productivity and security at the same time and create this seamless experience. So the kids log into the laptop, they fire up Teams, and guess what they did? Even though those applications were from different companies, they all plugged that into the Teams dashboard. And that is one of the things that you have to start forward thinking about. How do I navigate this pandemic? And one of the things is having the right tools, building a digital footprint infrastructure, and using the right secure tools that you could use for your organization. If you look at the old world, this is kind of what it looked like. It was easy to, share data and get access to tools. Someone worked in an office, they were on a PC, they used the local area network connection. They would speak to a private resource in that building, connect to some app, and no communication leaves the building. Now, what COVID has shown us is that you have a much bigger footprint to work with now. You have folks that some may be still working in the office because they're frontline workers. You may have folks that are mobile. You may have folks working from home. They're using all different type of connections, mobile, LAN, Wi-Fi. They're connecting to all different types of applications. In fact, COVID has really accelerated the use of, software as a service, remote applications, even still some home-based applications, and then trying to secure that while connecting to all these different infrastructures. And so one of the things to really think about as you approach how you handle COVID and this pandemic is you have to look at it in 2 views. How do you stay secure but stay productive? And I literally mean that both from a business standpoint and including from a personal standpoint. So as a business, you're going to have to make sure you secure not only your data. Phishing attacks, cyber attacks have exponentially grown in this new COVID era. So you have to think about how I'm going to secure the stuff that I utilize. And in addition to that, how do I stay productive while I'm working remote? And it's the same thing with your own personal story. And I'll end up with this before I have another speaker speak. When this COVID started, my own personal family story was this. Guy, 6 kids, us Jamaican and Hispanic families, we're known for a little macho attitude. I never did a flu vaccine. Didn't think I'd ever want to do one. It wasn't worth it for me. But being a data-driven person that worked in technology, one of the things that I had to do was, hey, what is the probability of me getting COVID? You know, what is the risk versus reward of me staying home or me going out and, with regards to contracting it? And what would be the opportunity cost if I took a vaccine or I didn't take a vaccine? And one of the things that really brought me back to is, how do I stay secure but being productive? And because of that, I ended up doing the vaccine because I looked at the data-driven and analytics that worked for me, doesn't work for everyone, and I made a decision based on that. And that's how everyone should approach how they handle business in this COVID era.
Okay, great. Thank you. Peter, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Dave?
Yep.
Great. So, hey, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's my pleasure to speak to you. As David mentioned, I graduated in 2013 from the music school at Frost, where I played cello and piano. Did a lot with the music school, but also had some great inspiration from my accounting teachers, my finance teachers, and that really led me into a career in banking. And I've been fortunate enough to shape it such that I cover technology, media, and some telecom companies now. That's a really strong area of focus for me. Whenever I tell people about what I do, I first like to talk about what I don't do. And that's one, I'm not an investment banker like you kind of see in the movies sometimes or portrayed on television. I don't work in private equity either, which you also hear a lot about these days, and can always answer any questions you hear about that. But I work with those people. And so as a lender, it's my job to make sure that when Capital One has a dollar going out the door to a company that we're lending to, that we're going to get that dollar back. Because what's maybe a little bit of a misconception in commercial lending is that the interest rates are not what you see on credit cards or personal loans. Banks don't make a ton of money on interest. They make it in other ways. And so we have to be really careful when we have capital going out the door, because at the best case scenario is that we get that $1 back, and we get back at par plus a little bit of interest. So how did business change, or how did business pivot? That was at the forefront of my mind when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. And it really shifted quite dramatically. And so I can remember in February and very early May, we were charging hard. The economy was going great. We were trying to make loans, growing our business. And then almost all of a sudden, the leveraged loan market just shut off. And they almost said, not a lot going out the door today. We got to protect what's on our balance sheet. We need to make sure the companies that we currently work with and have money out to are protected, that we are protected as lenders, and that they have what they need to be supported. And you saw a lot of customers calling in and drawing down on the revolving lines of credit, which is like a very big credit card for a company, saying, well, we think we're okay, but we want to park a couple extra million on our balance sheet because we're not sure. There was a lot of uncertainty. And so we had to go back, and while we weren't doing anything on the newer side, we were looking at our portfolio and saying, okay, we have all these loans out. We have our investment cases, we have our projection models, and so we try to predict what's going to happen to that company over 3, 5, 7 years. But we were really forced to pivot, go back and look and say, well, these were our assumptions. Are those still relevant? How does that change based on what we know now, given that, one, there is a ton of uncertainty, but two, things are just shutting down. When we had previously looked at downside cases, kind of call it up until February or March, we always would look back and say, well, what happened to this company in the Great Recession? What happened in 08, 09? And all of a sudden, we thought that was kind of the benchmark for what would happen in the next kind of recession or kind of black swan event, however you want to define it. But then this was something completely different, where businesses just shut down. And so we had to really go back to the drawing board and kind of think critically about where our exposure was. In terms of resilience, it has focused, it's reminded us, I think, two things that are really big key takeaways for me. One, it's focused on how important it is to still do your own homework. And so what do I mean by that? And so when I get an opportunity to lend to a company, if a private equity company is marketing it or an investment banking company is marketing it, this deck says, this company is the greatest thing ever. You should lend to us. We'd love your money. We have the best management team, et cetera, et cetera. And that's great. Like I personally have never seen one of these lender decks come in and say, you know what, next year, guys, we're going to take ownership of this business and we're just going to fly it into the side of a mountain. It doesn't happen. So you have to do a lot of homework before, and now you have to do even more to make sure you understand what are the tailwinds, what are the headwinds, why is this company successful, why may they not be? If we lend them that dollar, are we going to get it back? And so there's just a greater emphasis on doing your own work, being confident in your assumptions and being able to back it up via third-party research, talking to management, talking to other experts in the field. And then the other thing that really has kind of highlighted resilience for me is that there's really been an emphasis or a reminder that fundamentals still matter. And so what do I mean by that? And so when we lend money out to a company, generally we're not really secured by anything. We have an all business asset security, but I can't go sell a house, right? There's not a lot of fixed assets. And Joshua can talk to you more about that side, but I rely on a company's future cash flows to pay me back. And so we look for companies with strong market share, with stable operating history that shows, okay, they've been able to produce sufficient cash flows in the last couple of years. We project that they'll still be able to do that. And so by focusing on those fundamentals, our business has been pretty sound. There's been a lot of tailwinds, as you might have seen in different areas of technology. I mean, I'm sure Zoom is having a great time. Certain other companies like Netflix saw a boom in subscribers. And so some companies and a lot of companies that I work with technically benefited from some of the events. But again, there's just been that re-emphasizing on how important the good fundamentals are for business, and making sure you've got those good management teams in place, you've got sound decision makers, and that you're prepared to withstand such an event.
Great. Hey, Peter, I jotted down several notes on what you said, but one thing that really stood out to me was when you said, do your own homework. I have some of my current students on the line here, and hopefully they heard that. So it's not just homework while they're in school in this course, but they're going to be doing this in their career as well, right? That due diligence. Yep. Thank you for that, Peter. Let me go on to Joshua.
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, excellent. So first off, thank you again for having me, everyone. My name is Joshua Gray. I did graduate from UM in 2012. My background is in electrical engineering, and I actually worked in electrical engineering for about 7 years. I was in the world of industrial automation up until the height of the pandemic, 2020. And luckily, I had already launched with my business partner, John Clark, who's also on this webinar. We launched JJRA Group in October of 2019, so it was already part-time. So after we were shut down and at home in office, I was able to go full-time into JJRA Group. So I'm a full-time real estate investor, and I'm now also a realtor in the state of Georgia. So, yep, thank you. Speaking about pivoting, so in the world of industrial automation, even before, so that was a very on-site, on-call job, a lot of electrical engineering jobs within itself. The consulting aspect, you had to physically be there. And this is at the height of the pandemic when we're talking production lines, manufacturing companies, it's taking a hit. Line workers were, falling ill, especially in the food and beverage industry. And these were like locations where I was supposed to actively be in. And it's like, I find myself confined to my home. But I think the biggest segue into from that standpoint to now is I always worked out of a home office, right? So this kind of being in the pandemic, I feel like I really kind of thrived even more because it's like, cool, I'm used to working in the home office environment or kind of working from home situation, what have you. But in terms of real estate here in Atlanta, we know we're currently in the seller's market, and I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. If anybody has talked to anybody in real estate, or if you're buying or selling, this is what the market has done over the past few years. So as we can see, it dips, it gains, but moreover, the real estate industry has more or less kind of kept the country running as a whole. We didn't see, as realtors and even on the investment side, we didn't see a shutdown in properties becoming available. People were still moving, people were still buying houses, people were still selling their homes. So that's one of those industries is more or less kind of unaffected by the pandemic. In that case, one of the biggest challenges within this space, though, was understanding that the real estate industry is tied into, of course, you have the law industry. So we had lengthier closings, material delays from being delivered, production to produce these raw goods and turn them over where they could be manufactured. So a lot of those things had to be taken into consideration. So What really helped us, or luckily for us, we already had an established team of contractors, investors, and other key stakeholders before the pandemic hit. And that has ultimately allowed us to remain resilient during these unprecedented times. So for anyone who's watching, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of people love to talk about real estate, and especially here in the Atlanta market where it's booming, they literally can't build the houses fast enough. If you're in yeah, if you're in the market looking for a home, I would just say definitely, you know, stay patient. As you can see from this data right here, it's all within a cycle, right? There are dips. So just kind of stand by. That'd be my advice to anybody now.
Wow. Wow. All right, Joshua. Thank you so much. You know, while you still have that graph up there, you know,
Sure.
one thing that struck me was, I guess I was looking for the big dip. You know, if I look at just the blue line there, I don't see a big dip at all, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that really stands out is at the other end of that, you know, where that curve just sort of shoots up. It's jetting up. And it makes me think about this idea again of the race car kind of accelerating now, right? I mean, it was moving fast, and now it's moving even faster. So thank you for sharing that as it relates specifically to the real estate industry.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Okay. So just in terms of time, so that has kind of given us an opportunity to hear a little bit about your individuals and sort of your own experience within your organization. I guess I would like to just kind of ask a couple questions, and maybe we can have a little bit of conversation. We wouldn't need to have everyone sort of answer each of these questions, but if anything sort of resonates with you, you know, let me know and go ahead and chime in. And then maybe we could open the floor up to some of our attendees who are watching along with us. One of the things that I guess I think about is, you know, it's only been just about a year, yet we see that kind of the world has shifted, right? We've gone through this big change, and I'm wondering, what do you guys think, or could anyone sort of speak to what you think might be a key to business success going forward that maybe wasn't really such a big issue just a year ago?
I think
You know,
go ahead, Chris.
oh, okay. I'll give a quick commentary on that, and I'll let you chip in, Peter. Peter said something good earlier today that resonated well with me, and it's doing your homework. And what I mean by that is, one of the things that I recently, even just me, recently learned was how successful engineering organizations have to be in the tech space. And the key thing that makes an organization successful is their agility, their ability to pivot to a new customer demand. An interesting data point was presented to me that I didn't realize. Venture capitalists did some research, and they looked at all the big companies that got started in the last probably 10 years. And they looked, what was their original idea, and did they stick with that idea? 70% of them changed. Would you believe it? Slack initially was a video company. It was not a communications company. They used chat to communicate internally. They built their own platform. And when the company was going to go under, they said, you know what? This tool works. Let's make this our major product. So they took an internal tool and used it as a consumer product. And that's the key thing. Organizations that do their homework, understand the market, and realize, what does the customer want right now? And what's the quickest way I can pivot and deliver that to them? Peter.
Yes, I was going to take a little bit more of an individual or I guess team-based approach to that answer. I think it's really been important to highlight the importance of strong collaboration when we're not all running into each other in the office. I think prior to the pandemic, a lot of people talked about how much they hated the Google Office, or I know it's been called the Google Open Office, and you don't really want to have everybody at a picnic table. And even though it was supposed to foster all this great collaboration, it was awful. I think that this is the other extreme, is that we aren't even seeing people face to face, and we aren't getting those interactions. And it's really forced us to think about new ways to collaborate. So it makes you almost appreciate just how much a normal office fosters that kind of development, especially as it relates to kind of mentoring junior or, kind of analyst associate level hires at a bank in my particular field, is that they really are lacking in those development opportunities, because at best, we're going over a financial model, we're going over a loan agreement on Zoom or on Skype, what have you. And so I think it's going to force us to look at new ways to collaborate. And I think one of the ways you do that is you improve your writing skills, because so much is done over email and chat now as opposed to just face to face.
Okay. New ways to collaborate, some new ways of meeting customer demand. What I like to think about, maybe delighting customers, right? You can't continue to do what you did before. And this is sort of a big example of that, your business may need to completely change if you want to be, competitive, right? To be able to compete in this new reality. Yes. And Peter, the point, I'm glad that you mentioned sort of the Google Collaborate sort of thing. I guess that gets me to my next question. I want to talk about this idea of maybe some challenges or maybe some missteps that organizations have made. This idea of resilience kind of speaks to, you're resilient because you've been through some things, right? You've had some challenges, and maybe you've made some missteps. And so what might have been some missteps that organizations have made coming through this that maybe the Kane community or those that are listening right now might be able to avoid, maybe learn from the mistakes of others. Any thoughts on that?
I can speak to that a little. Whether it's my own personal life, whether it's my experience at work, or whether it's the things that I even see in government, one of the principles of having what we call an agile organization that always stands out to me is that when you're pivoting and you're working at scale and you're trying to be impactful, there's a few things you have to do. One, you can't build too much process into everything, because if you're only a checklist person, something is going to cause you to have to go out of that normal order of operations. You have to be an adept thinker, someone that, yes, you understand the numbers, but you have to be able to think outside the box. At the same time, you still have to build process and make things repeatable where it makes sense. I'll give you a good example. With my own family navigating, family shopping and the pandemic. One of the things I did was I set up what I call like a cleaning table in my garage. And basically what I would do is, does it make sense for all of us as a family to go food shopping? No. One person goes, one person gets the groceries, come home, then a team of people, we literally do like an assembly line, me and my kids, we create a reproducible process where we clean, wipe, put away. And it's the same thing with business. Create repeatable processes where they make sense, standardize on those, but be agile, think out the box when you need to do things.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah. You got to be agile. We're actually getting questions coming in from the audience, from the attendees, and I'm happy to see that. I see one coming in. This is a pretty interesting question. Has there been any need for new forms of training due to the pandemic? Do you see us maybe having to maybe train ourselves differently, or how we train individuals in organizations? Has that needed to change? I don't know, Joshua, maybe want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So from one side of it, the training, even in real estate, I literally earned my real estate license during the pandemic, and all training is virtual now, right? So you go from having in-person classes where you have the ability to network and kind of, learn more in real time from other people, to now you're sitting in a Zoom training session as well, right? So that has some impact on, I guess, the change of academics as a whole, right? How do we go about relaying information to people? As far as the cleaning, my cleaning company that we own, we also we were doing virtual interviews at one time. And you think about, for a job that's very hands-on, like people have to physically be there. it's like we had the capability. Like, we don't know what the standards or what the process was, but we can talk to you virtually right now, and we can meet up on the job when things make it, when things open up, when it's safe for us to do that. And even speaking, back to my days in manufacturing, we went from trying to show people how to use products in person and, on a line in real time, to literally showing them over a camera. And it's just not the same effect at all.
Well, I can certainly, I can't even imagine that actually. I got my career start in manufacturing and automotive manufacturing. And I remember what it was like training my folks on the assembly line. And I can't even imagine how you'd have to then change and actually change completely the way you would train those folks. But you're absolutely right. Wow.
To pull on that thread a little bit, I'm going to go back to something. Peter, man, you've been dropping a lot of dimes on us today. Pete has said something about being able to communicate better. And if there's one thing this pandemic has taught us, and I've seen this with a lot of training now includes being able to be a better writer, being able to be a better communicator, understanding emotional intelligence. Because now, if you think about it, when you're sitting in front of someone, you can read certain cues. If you're delivering a virtual training, it's a total different thing. So people are trying to now even realize, how do you build all that stuff into all these online and virtual processes that we have to do? So yeah, Peter, you hit the nail on the head. Empathy is big, and you can see it's needed all around us.
Yeah, and I'll just tack on to that. I think the way you keep training a lot the same, right? To the extent your business process is still the same, you still have to train the same way. Where I think you can improve the training is by encouraging more questions and seeking more feedback, which you're not going to get. Encouraging people to speak up and ask a lot more questions than they might normally in a classroom setting or in an office setting, because there's just that element missing. There's that isolation, especially when someone's new to a job. We've brought on, personally on my team, 2 analysts completely remotely. One person who's worked with us a year remote, and another that we hired a couple of months ago who I've still never met in person. He's still working out of Massachusetts. So you really have to facilitate those open channels, that candor that might not otherwise be there.
I want to also kind of have us sort of focus. We've been talking about businesses a lot in terms of what companies have to do in terms of their own training, but really from an individual perspective, this idea of resilience. Joshua, I kind of want to hear from you, because I think about what you've talked about. You had to have been this person who was resilient, as an individual, to make the career change that you made, during this pandemic. And to have your own business as well, I think is hugely important for the audience to kind of hear. What would you say contributed? What are some of the kind of the things that contributed to your own resilience?
Sure. Well, for me, if anything I've learned during this pandemic is that it's never too late to add to your skill set, right? Even after graduating from Miami, I was working full time, and I went on to get my MBA. And I was doing, working full time and then taking classes in the evening. That experience within itself is like, wow, you're really capable of doing a lot more than you could ever imagine. And so the same thing can be said for now. Just recognizing I can always add to my skill set. For me, it was like also never realizing that you don't have to put yourself in a box, right? Just because you're doing this now doesn't mean you'll always have to do this, indefinitely, right? And being able to have those different skill sets really kind of, in my opinion, I want to learn as much about everything as possible. Like, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm forever nerd or what have you. I don't know, chalk it up to my engineering background, but I just want to know everything about everything, and anything that you can, grab on and find success within, by all means do it, because I really feel like we live in an economy now where you can't just be a one-trick pony. You gotta learn how to do a lot of things and know how to do them well.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of that, so adding to, not being afraid to always add to your skill set. Great takeaway from that. Peter, maybe you could also maybe speak to, because I think of this idea of resilience also kind of comes from a broad array of experiences. I think maybe you can talk about, you had some rich experiences as an undergraduate, rich experience while you're at the U, that, I think hopefully you can talk about how that might have contributed to your career path now, which, some might argue, well, it's a different direction you've gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so to kind of expand on that, my actual degree from UM is a music business degree, where I studied kind of the music industry and just the broader entertainment industry. And as part of that program at UM, that's actually pretty unique, is that you are a full-time music major and then what I called a part-time business major. And so there were certain classes, or semesters, where I was taking upwards of 14 and 15 classes that I would go to. Some of them, they don't have all the same amount of work. Maybe one was, they have these 0 credit classes in the music school, which is that could be another forum. But it taught you to be resilient and how to manage a lot of different priorities at one time, which I think has been really important, especially as I kind of pivoted careers from being in the music industry, from my internships and my undergrad experience, to being in finance and banking ever since I graduated. And learning how to do that also taught me how to work with a lot of different people, which is kind of an interesting way to look back on it, is that you're with all these creative music professors kind of for your music classes, and you go to take your accounting and your finance class, and you're like, wow, this person looks at maybe a similar problem just a completely different way. And so it helps you really balance. We often talk about the art and the science behind deals when we're working on those. And so I feel that I'm able to see at least some parts of each side of that because of my background. And that's helped me be resilient in ways where if I'm learning something new on the job, or just kind of learning a new finance skill set or a new way to look at credit agreements, things are always changing in my industry as it relates to finance instructors. And so you learn to look at things creatively and scientifically.
Super. And I know that, so our time is running short. We only have just a couple moments left, but I want to make sure before we leave that maybe if you guys can say anything to any of the current students, maybe a bit of encouragement actually, because, let's face it, they're graduating at a time, they've gone through an undergraduate career probably like none other, right? Is there anything we can say to them about how this might have contributed to their own resilience going forward?
Yeah, I can start there. I think it'd be really important for those that have done remote learning or, kind of any combination of live or remote. If you're looking for jobs, what I think you'll notice is that a lot of postings these days for new grads are remote. I mean, I know personally for Capital One that we're posting for remote starts. I mean, we had one analyst start back in March of last year, fully remote. We had one start a couple months ago. And so I would use that to your advantage and say, well, I went through my junior year, my senior year, what have you. I was completely remote. I got great grades, or I learned this awesome new skill. Look how much of a benefit I'd be to your company because I've already gone through this. I can pick up something new in a remote basis or on a remote basis and be successful at it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'll touch on that a little bit. Colin Powell once said that there are no secrets to success, is really the results of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure. And one of the things to understand in this new era is that your failures can be your successes. My path through corporate America or even academics is not the traditional one. You would probably consider me a late bloomer. I dropped out of college 3 times. I first wanted to be a political science and a law major, didn't last. I then wanted to be a math major, didn't last. I was in the tech industry, wanted to be a computer science major, didn't last. And what really focused me was have a plan. I decided what were the things that were important to me. And I literally gave myself 5 goals then that I live to this day. What is the vision around it? Does it have a product process, that aligns to that vision? Is it a culture that I want to be a part of? Will I continue to learn if I make myself a part of this process, study, organization? And last but not least, I literally put what is the financial benefit last, because every decision I made thinking of money first ended up being the wrong one. Put your heart where your passion is. And when you do that, it's not work after that. I literally then completed 2 undergrad degrees and my MBA, and it was the easiest thing I did after that.
Fantastic. Let me just say, so I'm getting the time check warning, and we're running out of time right now, so I have to cut off our conversation. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much to each of the panelists. You can see that there was so much richness here. We could probably go on for the next couple of hours talking, but I want to say thank you so much, folks, for joining us on the panel. Likewise, let me also say thank you to all of the attendees who have joined, and especially want to say thanks to Dean Myers for also joining us tonight from the Atlanta area. We certainly appreciate the love you have for the U, and we think that it's just being an amazing cane. Thank you to everyone. We are all connected to this university, and let's all work together and as we sort of navigate during these challenging times together. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amber to close us out.
So thank you very much, everyone, for participating tonight. Thank you to all our panelists and our moderator, Dr. Major, for participating in our insightful conversation tonight. And before we close, I'd like to share one last poll question for all of your feedback. One, did you enjoy tonight's event? And two, would you recommend this to a fellow Cane? Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you showing up for sure. This is a really good conversation. I'm not as courageous as going out into the entrepreneurial field as Josh and all of you, but you're very inspiring, and I love it. And I hope we can have more conversations like this in the future. So now, thanks for taking the time to answer. And I'd like to, before we go, mention one of our upcoming virtual events. Our next event will be Cane Biz, How to Survive, Thrive, and Grow with the U. This takes place on Thursday, April 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. During this program, we will launch the new Cane Biz website, a place where Canes connect and do business. This free platform showcasing alumni-owned businesses offers enhanced resources, discounts, and ways to support your fellow Canes. Also, if you'd like to become more involved with our host community tonight, the Atlanta Canes, please contact us at atlantacanes@miami.edu or follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And on behalf of the Atlanta Canes Board and Alumni Association, thank you very much to everybody who attended and joined us tonight. We really hope you enjoyed our program. And just before we go, we would love it if all of our panelists could throw up your U so we can take a screenshot together for tonight, panelists.